Hyundai Elantra coupe, and AC's not getting cold on it. I had this car running for just a minute when I pulled it in. It's been sitting outside in the sun, so it's pretty hot in here. I'd say it's probably 90 degrees inside the car right now. All the surfaces are pretty warm. It's probably like 67 degrees outside, but in the sun, the inside of the car got nice and hot. And the air coming out of the vents, I'm not going to measure it, but it's barely cooler than outside temperature on the passenger side. And then on the driver's side, it feels even a tiny bit warmer. When I turn the AC button on and off, I can hear the compressor kicking on and turning off every time I turn the AC on and off. So it has at least enough system charge in it for the compressor to kick on. When I cycle the blend door all the way from hot to cold, I can listen. Okay, that just went full hot, and now my vents are nice and hot. I can clearly hear the blend door stopping all the way at the hot side and all the way at the cold side. So not a blend door situation, not an actuator issue. Let's go ahead and pop the hood and take a look here. If I feel this low side coming out of the condenser, it's slightly cold. Not very cold, but slightly cold. And then nice and hot on this high side like I would expect. Let's go ahead and hook up some gauges and see what we got for pressures here. There's a few different scenarios that could be going on. We could have a failing AC compressor. We could have a stuck open or poorly flowing expansion valve back there, or we could have low system charge, which is kind of more what I'm suspecting. This high side cap is full of AC oil, and if I watch closely, there's little tiny bubbles coming out around that Schrader valve. Now I don't have any sort of dye on the outside of this cap, so I believe that Schrader valve cap was sealing this section off no problem, because when I pulled the cap off, I had a tiny bit of pressure built up inside there. And I don't have any sort of residue, oily residue, or dye around the outside of here, so I don't believe that's why the system's low. But this high side valve stem is leaking, and one thing that I see a lot of guys make the mistake of doing is when they put on their machine fittings here, they drive this valve that's inside here all the way down by screwing this all the way down tight. That doesn't need to be down tight. It just needs to be open far enough for it to flow into the hose. See, right now on my high side, I'm getting a reading of about 60 PSI. And when you drive them all the way open, sometimes that causes them to leak and damages the Schrader valve inside there. Or the valve core, I should say. So same thing on this back one. I'm just gonna open it about halfway. I'm not gonna drive it all the way open. And right now with our system running, we see pretty normal ratio between the high and the low side, but they're both reading too low. So this right here is indicating to me that we have a low system charge. I'm gonna go ahead and shut it off and evacuate the system, see how much Freon we have in there, and then we're also gonna do a visual inspection on everything. So what we know at this point is our HVAC controls, our relay, our wiring, and our compressor electrically is kicking on. Doesn't necessarily mean that our compressor is good. If we had a failing compressor, I would expect to see our low side about normal and our high side not building up enough pressure on the high side. So I believe this is just a low system charge, but let's go ahead and evacuate it and see how much is in there. And while that's evacuating, we can take a look around all the seals and everything, condenser, and check and see if we have any leaks anywhere. Back on our expansion valve, which is right back here, this is just some dirt. There's no oil residue at all. It's nice and dry. If I look back behind it, it's nice and dry. Around this Schrader valve fitting where our low side service port is, that was all nice and dry. And then I'm just gonna follow these lines all the way as far as I can see them up here. And everything looks nice and dry up top. However, when I look down at these two hoses, if you notice one has a light film on it, or if you notice one of them is lighter looking than the other one, and that's because this one has just a light film of AC oil on it that's been collecting dirt. So this hose fitting right here is leaking onto that hose, and if I look down a little further down the line, it looks even more wet down at the bottom. We've got a AC hose leaking for sure right there. From what I can see, this condenser is nice and dry, so that's looking good. Compressor down there looks all nice and dry on the top side. Pulley looks all nice and dry. Probably can't see it super well on the video, but I can see the whole bottom of the compressor. And compressor's dry, but if we look down at the bottom of that hose, this hose is definitely wet with AC oil. I'm gonna go ahead and recover and see how much is in there, and then see if we can get an approval to replace this leaking hose. This will usually take about 15-20 minutes, so I'm gonna go ahead and let this do its thing. As soon as it's done recovering, it'll tell us how much it pulled out of the system, and I'll start the video back up. All right, so we recovered 0.099 pounds, which is nothing, about 10% or less of what it should have in it. since we did lose a little bit of oil through this hose leaking, I mean, maybe not much, maybe 0.1 of an ounce, but I am going to take that in consideration. We ended up going up about a half an ounce on our oil recovery after our recharge. We started at 2.5 ounces, now we're just at 3. So I'm going to go ahead and add about 0.8 ounces of oil back into this system. It takes PEG 46, which we have built into our machine. We did get approval to go ahead and change this hose out. And I feel pretty confident, since the system was still holding pressure, and now the system is actually holding vacuum, that this hose is going to be our only leak, and that Schrader valve obviously is leaking. But I'm going to get the machine out of the way. I can just leave it hooked up on the low side. But what I like to do before I take apart any AC system stuff is I'm going to clean off the area around here and down at that compressor down there. This upper fitting is for the hose that we're going to be replacing. Just so when I take these hoses off, it doesn't get any dirt or debris falling down into the fittings or down into the compressor. Just hit it with a little bit of brake clean to rinse it. Dry it with some air. Blow any junk out of the area. And I don't think we're even gonna have to lift this car. Now you can see we got a nice clean area around both fittings, so we're not gonna be dropping any junk into the AC system. AC systems need to be very, very clean to stay working properly. You don't want any sort of contamination in there. So we do got a new hose coming. They had one in stock at our primary store, so it shouldn't take too long to get here. Probably be here before I get this one off. Got it. Little operation. Got it. A little wiggle, a little jiggle. Got it. We gotta remember this one kind of fishes in around the inside of that bigger hose down there. We gotta make sure that's routed properly going back together, so gotta take note of that. Oh yeah, just gonna get a tiny bit of brake clean on a rag here and wipe out the spots where these O-rings seal up to inside the compressor and inside that line, just to make sure we don't have any junk in there. Probably won't be able to get this one on film because my arm's gonna be in the way. But being careful not to push any debris in there, I'm just gonna gently put the rag down inside the hole and give her a few little twists. Make sure that's nice and clean for the new O-ring to seal up. Beautiful. And one of the keys was cleaning that off before we took it off, because if we didn't, we could have dropped some dirt down into that surface, which one, could possibly affect how this O-ring seals up, or for two, could potentially get some sort of debris down into the compressor. It looks like this one was leaking mostly on the bottom side, but also leaking on the top side and running down. New hose is here. I'm gonna go ahead and save these because they'll come in handy for something. It's my cap box, that's where I get all those from. Typically what I like to do is just get some AC refrigerant oil or some AC system oil in a cap, and I'll dip my part that I need lubed up in some oil. I'll go ahead and get it on both sides here. We can wipe it from here, but we want to make sure that the O-ring is nice and lubed up so it doesn't rip going back in. And that'll also help it seal. If you love it, lube it. Pull this down a little bit so it gets fully saturated on both sealing surfaces. Easy. Just want to make sure that stays nice and clean. And then we'll make sure this is all fully coated. Now one thing I'm going to do is pop this cap back on the bottom side, because I have to route that around that bottom hose. And I don't want it getting any dirt stuck on that O-ring or on the sealing surface. This top side doesn't have to go around anything, so it's not a big deal, but this one has to route down around that radiator hose and then down in between the compressor and the other AC hose. So it's gonna have to rub on some stuff. This one I can go ahead and put down right in to where it goes. Go ahead and bolt this down into place. And this doesn't need to be very tight. It's a 6mm thread. So probably 89 inch-pounds would be the torque spec. One click. I'm gonna go ahead and just check it by hand and make sure it feels good. About seated plus 1/8 of a turn. That's perfect. This is aluminum, so if you over tighten it, it's easy to damage stuff. Now we've got our hose in place down on the bottom side. Go ahead and pull it back and pull that cap off. Cap should come off pretty easy now that it's got some lube on there. Not a lot of working room here. Okay. And I'm just going to carefully not let it touch on anything. Try to get it just right down into the clean compressor bore there. I'm just going to give her a little wiggle and a tiny bit of inward pressure to make sure it seats down and goes in smooth and doesn't pinch the O-ring at all. That feels good. Get the bolt in. And I'm just going to run this in by hand to make sure for sure that this O-ring seats down on the bore without pinching anything. That way I can kind of wiggle the line a little bit while I'm running the bolt down finger tight. Just make sure it's seated. Feels good there. And then same thing with this bolt down here. It doesn't need to be super tight. We looked up the torque spec on it. It's probably like 10 foot-pounds, 13 foot-pounds. But I'm not getting the torque wrench down into that tiny little spot. I'm going to go ahead and use this small ratchet. I'm going to tighten it down till that bolt is seated, and then I'm going to give it another 1/8 of a turn to cinch it down. They're seated there. I'm going to hold it flat with one hand, give her a little height, yeah, with the other hand. That feels good. Cool, this thing's ready to go ahead and put under vacuum. So we can get our high side hook back up. Run this down about halfway. That's plenty. We're gonna go into a vacuum sequence. I'm gonna put this thing under vacuum for 45 minutes and run a vacuum test on it to make sure it holds vacuum, which I'm pretty confident that it's going to. We do need to get a low side cap. These are actually, if you go to an AC class, considered the primary seal of the system and its job. Just like it did on that old one, the Schrader valve was leaking a little bit, but because that cap was tightened down on there, the O-ring on the cap kept it from leaking a bunch of Freon out. Now the hose still leaked, so take that for what it's worth, but I'm gonna find a new cap to put on that low side fitting back there. 45 minutes, vacuum test on. So we'll go ahead and let the machine do its thing, and I'll come back once it's ready to charge it up. See if it passed the vacuum test. All right, so this thing just finished up doing a deep vacuum on the system and a leak test on it, passing the leak test, holding vacuum just as we suspected it would by fixing that hose and fitting. A couple of reasons why we put the system under vacuum. Number one, when you recharge the system, you need to make sure there's no air in the system whatsoever, and then we get just refrigerant in the system. That way it doesn't have air pockets in it. Just like a cooling system for your engine, you don't want any air pockets trapped in there because it's not going to allow proper flow. You also don't want any air pockets trapped within your air conditioning system. That will hinder the flow at all there. But also, the reason why we put it in a deep vacuum like this for 45 minutes at least is because under vacuum, that's boiling all the moisture and contaminants out of that system and making sure that we have a clean AC system before we charge it back up. The other thing I want to check is make sure our oil level didn't raise up at all since our recovery, and it's still right at 3 ounces. So we're going to stick with our 0.8 ounces of PEG 46 like we talked about. But now that we have a vacuum on the system, when we go to charge this thing, that vacuum is going to help pull the charge into the system along with the machine itself building up some pressure to charge the system as well. So we're going to go ahead and charge this thing up. Most AC systems, you'll find a sticker under the hood somewhere that looks something like this. They almost always have yellow on them, yellow or orange. And this one takes anywhere between 1.04 and 1.15 pounds of refrigerant. It also usually will specify what kind of oil it takes, and this one takes PEG 46. So we're gonna go ahead and do a charge on this thing. We're gonna add 0.8 ounces of oil. And that 0.8 ounces number that I got is a result of two different things. One, when we recovered the system, it pulled out about a half an ounce, a tiny bit more than a half an ounce. And then this also has been leaking a little bit of refrigerant and oil on this hose. So I'm gonna go ahead and charge it up a little more than half of an ounce to also ensure that we have enough oil inside of our AC system, for one, to carry the refrigerant through the system, but also to keep our compressor lubed up nicely. When this was kicking on before, it was making a tiny bit of noise. And when systems get low on charge like that and are still running, there is possibilities of damaging the system. So I'm gonna add just a little bit more oil than we pulled out to make sure we have plenty in there. The only way to know 100% for sure how much oil is in this system right now would be to pull every single component out and drain it and measure it, and then start all over again by adding oil to every single component. Well, when we're fixing a small leak like this, we're not gonna go through all that. All we can really go off of is what we're seeing. If it was low on oil to begin with, it probably wouldn't have recovered any AC oil out of the system. But since we recovered a half an ounce, I feel pretty confident that it wasn't completely low on oil. So I'm just gonna add another 0.3 to compensate for the leak, and then just to add a tiny bit more to make sure that it's all good. You can add too much oil to a system, which will cause the system not to work very well. And it can also cause some weird noises to happen, like when the compressor kicks on. So what we're gonna do once we get this thing charged up to the proper amount is run it and watch our gauges and make sure our gauges look normal. And I'll be expecting to see our high side up from 150 to 250 in that range, and our low side anywhere from 50 to 80 or 90 psi in that range. And I love doing AC work. We do it all summer long here. I usually have an AC machine going all day. If I was worried about needing this stall right while I was waiting for this thing to do its 45 minutes of vacuum, I might have pulled it outside and ran the machine outside, because I don't need a stall to do that. But while this was under vacuum, I went ahead and went over and got an alignment done on that F-150 that we did the upper control arm and fixed the oil filter adapter leak on. So by the time I finished that and test drove it, this thing was just about finished up and didn't really have to waste any time at all. So this machine is all automatic. It measures the charge that we pull out of it with the internal scale. It has an internal tank hooked up where it's got refrigerant stored in here, and it captures any refrigerant we pull out of a system, filters it, and stores it in the internal storage tank, and then we can use that to recharge systems. And what we do as far as how we charge people is we mark down how much refrigerant was pulled out of the system to begin with, and then subtract that from the amount that it takes to charge it back up to the proper level, and that's how we know how much refrigerant to charge. Or that's how we know how much refrigerant to charge people for. So this one had 0.1 pound basically in it, so we'll subtract that from the 1.15 and charge them 1.05. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get a snapshot on the machine. That way we have record of how it was looking afterwards, but this will also give us the opportunity before we equalize hoses to see what our pressures are doing before we disconnect the machine. We'll go ahead and start this up and turn it on max. And max AC is basically just AC on with your recirc on, is all max AC really is. So as we can see now on our high side, we're building up high side pressure, and then our low side is staying around 30-40 psi. So this is what a normally charged and functional AC system will look like. It is a little cooler out today, so if it was hotter outside, we'd see our low side pressures up a little higher. But since it's only 60 degrees out, now when I get my hand back here on this low side hose near my low side fitting, it feels ice cold. Now that we've confirmed that we have normal readings on our AC system, it's gonna go ahead and have us equalize the hoses. So we'll disconnect our high side hose, start our AC system to max. And this will equalize using the machine, the two sides of the system. And once our gauge drops down below 40, it'll tell us to go ahead and disconnect the machine from there. These Robinair machines are great. They pretty much walk you through the whole process. When I first started using them, I had no idea really how to do AC work, so it was nice to have. And we can go ahead and disconnect our lines, or disconnect our service ports. We can go ahead and disconnect our machine, get our high side cap back on here, and see if we've got a low side one that'll fit. I don't know what style it is, but no, it's not that. That one's too small. This one looks like the originals. Yep. And two purposes that we're serving here by putting these caps back on. One, it's keeping any dirt and debris out of those Schrader valve fittings, so that way when we go to service this thing in the future, we don't have a bunch of dirt inside there. But like I was mentioning before, this is considered the primary seal of the system, and we want to keep these caps on here just in case that Schrader valve leaks. It's the last defense basically from refrigerant leaking out into the atmosphere, and we care about the atmosphere. So just judging off of how icy cold this back line is, I can pretty much guarantee you that it feels nice and cool inside the car. Let's go check out what's coming out of the vents. Oh yeah, bro. You could literally make popsicles inside there if you wanted to. Surprised there's no snow. That's our word we say when we're pulling cars out after we fix the AC. Popsicles, dog. It's popsicles. That's way better. She's gonna be feeling so nice and cold now. See if I can make it from here. There's no chance. Maybe around the corner. Bank shot, didn't make it, but pretty close. It feels so good. And I'm gonna try, just for fun, let's grab a thermal gun and see what the temperature is coming out of the vents. Hello? Where is it? There it is. I'm gonna go Fahrenheit. It says my skin's 85 degrees, and we got 30, 29, 28.9 coming out of the vents. It's icy cold, bro. With summer coming up, it does get to be about 100 degrees out in July and August in here where I live. And she does have some breathing problems when she gets super hot, so it's really important for us to nail this AC work on this thing. She's gonna be super happy. Man, we can go ahead and park it. It is ready to go. Bro, that's honestly like freezing me out. It's not that warm out, so I'm cold. AC work, dude. Bring it to me all summer long. I love it.